weather mayhem.
On my way to the airport, I see my flight's canceled.
Our Tom Costello is in hard-hit Florida.
Florida is an Achilles heel for the airlines this summer. More passengers than 2019, too few pilots, air traffic control staffing issues, and the weather is very volatile.
And bad weather doesn't always mean storms. If it's too hot, planes might be forced to restrict loads or require a longer runway, most commonly in cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas. But industry experts say that's not the crux of the problem.
There are always going to be weather cancellations. There are always going to be cancellations due to air traffic control. That's not the big picture here right now. This is an industry in crisis.
There's now growing scrutiny around the industry's handling of the billions it received in pandemic relief, money meant to ensure the airlines were ready for post-pandemic travel. But thousands of employees left the industry, and despite companies cutting back their summer flying schedules to improve reliability, staffing shortages are still fueling disruptions. How long is this chaos going to last?
It's a great question, and I'm sorry to say I don't see an end in sight. This is really unprecedented in terms of the number of cancellations that are occurring so close to departure time.
And Emily joins us now live from Newark Airport tonight. Emily, I feel for those passengers. I was one of them this weekend who couldn't fly out. With the airline so understaffed, what are passengers saying about the rebooking, even the hotel booking process if people are stuck in a city they're not from?
Tom, this has been the conversation of so many concerned travelers. For background, airlines are required to give you a refund for your ticket if your flight has been canceled, but airlines have varying policies when it comes to how to handle delayed passengers. Some will offer a meal or hotel voucher in certain circumstances, but so many travelers we're hearing from say it barely makes up for the costs they have to put out as a result of a rebooked flight, Tom.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience, it was impossible to get anyone on the phone this weekend. I know you have some tips for travelers flying out this summer that hopefully will help them going forward.
Yeah, and with July 4th right around the corner, this is absolutely something top of mind for so many of us. Travel experts say if you can, try to book an early morning flight, get airline alerts sent directly to your phone, and rather, if your flight is canceled, be proactive in rebooking or seeking out that potential refund. Tom, back to you.
Yeah, you have to really be proactive. You can't wait on the airline. At least that's what I found out. All right, Emily, we thank you for all of that. Emily Ikeda leading us off tonight for more on this travel crisis. And if it could get worse, let's bring in managing editor at the Points Guide to travel website, Clint Henderson. He's a travel expert. So, Clint, it seems like everyone has had trouble recently with airline travel. Emily mentioned in her piece that a lot of the issues going on are airline industry related. Rather than just weather, is there any resolution in sight when it comes to these shortages?
So unfortunately, it looks like we've gone from sold out summer to a summer of Armageddon is what we're calling it in the newsroom. It's been like this really since Christmas time, though. You've seen every weekend, it seems like it's a different airline that's canceling 10, even 20% of their flights. And there's just no wiggle room anymore. So if you get weather that goes bad in one location, it means crews, it means planes are out of position, and it used to be the airlines were able to pick up the slack. They cannot do that anymore. So that's why you're seeing them start to reduce the number of flights, the number of destinations. They just don't have the staff to fix the problems when they pop up. And let's face it, a thunderstorm in the summertime shouldn't bring an airline to its knees. It's just not the way it should be.
It doesn't make any sense, Clint. And Summer of Armageddon, we're going to steal that. That's a great way to sort of characterize what's happening across the country. Delta seemed to have the most cancellations, at least in Florida and New York. There was no contact from the airline. Their Twitter page was silent all weekend. I don't know if we've heard from the CEO. This is sort of strange. Are they running out of fumes right now? I just wonder if they're in crisis mode for the summer.
You know, I think Delta has always had a great reputation as the operational reliability leader. We've seen that get a little tarnished this year. And, it's hard to blame the airlines. They can't hire the people they need in airports, at ticket counters, for pilots, for flight attendants. A lot of folks just left the business and they're not getting back into it. And it takes a long time to train a pilot. So you can't just pump out a new class of pilots. So, the airlines are sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. That said, we did bail them out a few times, as I recall. And so we were hopeful that when the demand returned, which it certainly has, that they'd be more prepared than they have been so far.
Clint, I do want to mention, we asked for a Delta representative. They refused to come on. But I have to ask you on that last point you were mentioning, if they knew they were going to have these shortages, why are they booking these flights?
Well, I think the airlines missed out on a lot of profits during the pandemic, and they want to make up for that by, selling out planes and selling out flights. The problem is, they have scaled back this summer, Delta being a leader in that, reducing flights, about 100 flights starting July 1st. Other airlines like Alaska have cut 10% of their flights, but still they're not able to meet the demand that's out there. So this is a tricky one. And, I think they're going to have to cut some more this summer in order to get back on their feet.
Clint Henderson from The Points Guy, along with his dog there behind, who also looks upset at the travel season this summer. Clint, we thank you for coming on Top Story tonight. All right, we want to switch gears now to a tragedy that happened over this weekend. Gun violence claimed even more lives, including that of a 15-year-old in Washington. Some of the suspects are still at large, and Stephen Romo has this story.
Tonight, communities reeling after yet another deadly weekend of gun violence in America. Take a look at this terrifying scene in Washington, D.C. as a crowd flees in fear.
Somebody used a gun, and a child is dead.
That child, a 15-year-old boy, Chase Poole, plus 3 people, including a D.C. police officer, are wounded after being shot Sunday, according to law enforcement.
There's a theme that you see here. Illegal firearms in the hands of people who should not have them make events like this unsafe for people who just want to enjoy the beautiful weather, who want to enjoy Father's Day, and want to enjoy our city.
Authorities say it started as an unpermitted Juneteenth celebration.
It was very calm, very positive earlier during the day, and then toward the evening it started getting a bit rambunctious.
The search for the shooter or shooters continued Monday, but it wasn't the only deadly mass shooting this weekend. 90 minutes from Uvalde in San Antonio, Texas, a gunman opened fire Saturday night, shooting 7 people and killing 2 men. According to police, a family was having a barbecue when the suspect pulled up in a vehicle and fired several rounds. A neighbor who wished not to be identified reacting.
They are really good people. I mean, they have kids outside playing all the time, and I wave at them each and every single time.
Police are still working to identify that suspect. The incidents this weekend, though, bringing the total number of mass shootings in the United States where 4 or more people are injured or killed to 278 just this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Back in New York City, Monday morning, a college basketball star was shot in Harlem, along with 8 others. A gun was recovered at the scene, but no arrests have been made, according to police.
It's Father's Day weekend. It's a weekend where people were supposed to be able to enjoy themselves with their families.
21-year-old Darius Lee was back home on summer break when he was shot. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. His high school basketball coach said he's struggling to process that news.
What the hell is going on out here in Harlem? This is like, what type of world are we really living in? Like, it's beyond senseless.
Lee was recently named Male Student Athlete of the Year at Houston Baptist University. His sister speaking out, but not wanting her face on camera.
My brother is one of a kind. I can tell you that. One of a kind.
He's someone that everyone would root for. Like, he's a hometown hero.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now from Harlem, New York, where that recent shooting was. Stephen, what more can you tell us about Darius Lee? You said he was a basketball star. What more have you learned about him tonight?
Yeah, Tom, there's just so much heartbreak for Darius Lee. We understand from his school in Houston that he was set to graduate in December. Meanwhile, we know his family, of course, mourning his loss. And here in Harlem, where he was shot, there's so many people here who've come to remember him and call for peace in this situation. And just speaking about these shootings more in general, in many of these cases, there are no suspects named, no suspects in custody. Law enforcement reminding the public that the investigations move fastest when people in the public come forward and offer information to help solve these crimes. Tom?
Such a tragic outcome there in Harlem. All right, Stephen, we thank you for that. We turn to the economy now, and growing fears that the U.S. is barreling towards a recession. New models predicting a steep downturn is likely by the start of 2024, but President Biden insisting it can still be avoided. NBC's Maura Barrett is traveling with the president this weekend and has more on the political fallout.
Tonight, President Biden away from the White House, but still fighting back against fears of a recession.
There's nothing inevitable about a recession.
Biden addressing reporters near his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, back on his feet after taking a tumble while riding his bike over the weekend. The president today explaining his foot got caught in a pedal strap.
It got stuck on the right side. I fell in case you didn't notice.
But even on vacation, the president unable to distance himself from the rocky state of the economy. The former director of the National Economic Council under President Obama delivering this stark assessment.
The dominant probability would be that by the end of next year, we would be seeing a recession in the American economy.
That probability growing greater by the day. According to Bloomberg Economics, the chance the U.S. would be in a recession by the start of 2024 was virtually zero back in February. By mid-March, it had climbed to nearly 20%. And now, following the Fed's highest interest rate hike since 1994, that likelihood stands at 72%. But the Biden administration insisting a recession is not certain fate.
I expect the economy to slow. It's been growing at a very rapid rate as the labor market has recovered and we have reached full employment. It's natural now that we expect a transition to steady and stable growth. But I don't think a recession is at all inevitable.
Biden repeatedly shifting the blame, attempting to pin the country's economic woes on everyone from Vladimir Putin.
We've never seen anything like Putin's tax on both food and gas.
To GOP lawmakers.
The problem is, Republicans in Congress are doing everything they can to stop my plans to bring down costs on ordinary families.
But ultimately, the president paying the price for soaring inflation. Poll numbers show just 29% of Americans approve of Biden's handling of the economy. His overall approval rating plunging to 39%, with just 16% of Americans saying the country is on the right track.
All right, Maura Barrett joins us now live from the White House. So, Maura, those numbers speak for themselves. The president knows he needs to do something to get his approval rating back up, and he was asked about the possibility of a gas tax holiday today.
Tom, we've learned the White House is considering either a gas rebate card for Americans or a gas tax holiday, which would save consumers about 18 cents per gallon at the pump. The catch, though, that gas tax pays for roadway infrastructure, which is something the Biden administration celebrated just last year as it was signed into law. Regardless, Biden's saying today he plans to make a decision on the gas tax by the end of this week. Tom?
All right, Maura, we thank you for that. For more on the headwinds President Biden can't seem to get past, I want to bring in NBC News Digital senior political reporter John Allen for more. So, John, you know, the president's gotten some criticism for being too insulated. There's been a lot of reporting out there that he's not really getting the real story on everything from, you know, the gas prices to inflation to the child formula crisis. What are you hearing about this, and can the president get through this?
I think there are absolutely a lot of Democrats who believe that the president is insulated. I mean, it's hard to believe at this point that he's not fully aware, because he talks about it, about inflation, about the infant formula crisis, about other goods and services that Americans are having trouble getting or having trouble paying for. That said, it is very difficult to counter inflation. And so what you're hearing now, and from Maura's report, is more thinking inside the White House, not only about what they can do to actually counter inflation, but what they can do to show people that they are attempting to counter inflation. So when you talk about like a gas tax holiday, for example, from a larger economic perspective, most economists would frown on that and say it's not really going to do a lot. At the same time, it's something that makes people feel better and makes gas a little bit cheaper in the short term.
So, John, you know, on that point you were talking about, there's not too much he can do about inflation. You know, the Biden administration has been putting that out along with the gas prices as well. But they seem to be also getting caught flat-footed on some issues. Even this week in this travel issue, we sort of knew about this pilot shortage. And, of course, the White House can't solve every problem. But I just wonder if they're sort of operating from the back step and they're not taking the initiative on other issues. What's your take on that?
When I talk to White House officials, depending on which ones you talk to, but some of the White House officials I've spoken to who wish to remain anonymous say that they are concerned about just what you were talking about, that the president is insulated, that his top advisors don't necessarily bring him problems quickly, that there's a lot of desire to keep him happy. And then as a result of that, he is caught, as you suggested, flat-footed a lot.
So what are you hearing about President Biden's plans to run for re-election in 2024? We seem to this story sort of pops up, then it goes away, and then it comes up again. It seems to be back percolating. Is there anything to it?
And when you talk to people inside the White House, they all insist that he is running for re-election. He has said that he is running for re-election. What we have not seen is the kind of gearing up for a campaign that you might expect for a president who is at such a low approval rating and really is going to need to figure out what his argument is to the American people for giving him another 4 years at a time when the broad majority of the public doesn't approve of how he's doing. And that said, Democrats other than President Biden are moving forward with their own political operations. You see Bernie Sanders out there endorsing candidates. He's, basically ready to run if Biden doesn't, according to his top campaign aides. Elizabeth Warren has been very public lately about how she thinks the country could be doing better than it is. So if Biden doesn't run, there's a whole group that's ready to run. Of course, Kamala Harris, the vice president, would be first among those in terms of people likely to run. And at the same time, when you look at that group, they are a little bit waiting for Biden, and at the same time, not completely standing on the sidelines.
John Allen for us tonight. John, we appreciate you being on Top Story. We thank you for everything. We want to turn now to the battle for Ukraine. We are hearing for the first time tonight from the Kremlin about those American vets captured on the front lines in Ukraine, now held by Russia. NBC senior international correspondent Keir Simmons sat down with President Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, for an exclusive interview on the fate of those Americans. And a viewer note, Russia is cracking down on journalists and limiting what reporters can say under threat of imprisonment.
Tonight, the Kremlin's first comments after 2 American veterans on the front lines in Ukraine were captured by pro-Russian forces.
Russian television has broadcast interviews with 2 Americans captured in Ukraine, Alex Truki and Andy Wen. Where are they? Who is holding them? And what happens next?
They're soldiers of fortune, and they were involved in illegal activities on the territory of Ukraine. They were involved in firing and shelling our military personnel. They were endangering their life. They should be held responsible for those crimes that they have committed.
In an exclusive interview, I asked Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov about the 2 British nationals and a Moroccan captured by separatist rebels in Ukraine, now sentenced to death.
Can you guarantee that these Americans will not face the same fate?
No, I cannot guarantee anything. It depends on the investigation.
And we asked about another American being held in Russia, WNBA star Brittany Griner, who was detained at the airport in February, accused of carrying vape cartridges with hashish oil.
She was coming to take part in sport in Russia, effectively trying to build bridges through sport. It's a terrible message, isn't it, that she should be arrested?
It is also a terrible message to bring some forbidden essences and materials to this country. And it is prosecuted by Russian laws.
The special presidential envoy for hostage affairs is now leading the US effort to secure Brittany Griner's release. So the US government is now approaching this as a hostage situation.
I would strongly disagree with that. We cannot call her hostage. She violated Russian law. And now she's being prosecuted.
NATO leaders now warning of a long conflict in Ukraine. It may be one view Russia agrees on.
Are we in for a long conflict here?
Yes, it will be a long-lasting crisis. We will never trust West anymore.
All right, Keir Simmons joins us now live from Moscow tonight. Keir, I understand you have some new reporting. You were told during that interview that these Americans will not be treated as prisoners of war.
That's right, Tom. In that interview, I asked Dmitry Peskov whether Russia would abide by the Geneva Conventions in relation to these 2 American veterans who are being held in Ukraine by pro-Russian forces. And he said pretty much explicitly that they would not be treated as prisoners of war. Folks will know that that will have real implications for the way that they are treated, even for the potential that they could be put on trial and even face something like a death sentence. So that will be really worrying for the families of these men, Tom.
So, Keir, we also, I know you also addressed some speculation about Putin's health.
That's absolutely right, Tom. Indeed, people will have seen the reports about, varying reports about President Putin's well-being, about his health. I asked Dmitry Peskov directly about that. Take a listen. To comment on it. There's been a lot of talk about President Putin's health. You've called it ridiculous, pointed out that he appears on television, said that he's in good shape. You've denied several times that he's terminally ill, as has been suggested. Many reports, you've read them yourself, and yet people have suggested that at times he has seemed as if he is limping, as if he's shaking, as if he's gripping the table. Can you address that once and for all?
What I suggest is that you watch his performance on the St. Petersburg Economic Forum for 3.5 hours. His speech, delivering the speech, and then taking part in a panel discussion. And just think, if an unhealthy man can perform like that. And also, I can tell you one thing, that yesterday, I know in the afternoon, actually he played hockey. It's about yesterday. He was playing hockey. And then think about his health by yourself.
And, you know, Tom, we say again and again that it's impossible to know what's really going on within the walls of the Kremlin. The Kremlin are incredibly protective of its secrets, and particularly, of course, of President Putin. But fascinating and impactful to hear Dmitry Peskov, President Putin's spokesman there, directly addressing those questions about President Putin's health and denying that he is suffering in any sense with health issues. Tom?
All right, Keir Simmons with a very big interview and a lot of news for our viewers tonight. Keir, we appreciate it. Back here at home, we want to turn to the forecast now. Relentless heat hitting millions, with temperatures expected to climb up to nearly 110 degrees in some areas. But first, take a look at this. Firefighters in New Jersey battling a massive wildfire in the Wharton State Forest. That blaze reaching 11,000 acres and is now 50% contained. For more on those scorching temperatures, NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. Bill, so where's the heat going to be a danger, really?
It's shifting. It was over the weekend and today in areas like Minnesota. Minneapolis was 101 degrees, record high for them. Fargo hit 100 over the weekend, and now we're going to watch it shifting a little bit. Now it's going to head back towards the Midwest. Areas like St. Louis and Chicago, you're under heat advisories over the next couple of days. Also a little part of California too. And as far as the extreme heat goes, though, we have to wait till Wednesday and Thursday. So every red dot on this map shows you where record high could be broken. So this was today in areas of the northern plains, and then tomorrow a little bit in the Midwest and the South, and then throughout the deep South as we go throughout Thursday. And these temperatures are going to be not only challenging daily records, but potentially monthly records and maybe even all-time records in a few isolated cases. So Chicago tomorrow, 99, St. Louis 99, Little Rock 99, Dallas 100. You get the idea. Atlanta's back up to 98 tomorrow. But look what happens as we go through Wednesday and Thursday. Mobile, Alabama, 103 to 104. Usually you think of these places down towards the Gulf. They cool off with a sea breeze in the afternoon, some thunderstorms. It's a very dry air mass. This is a very unusual weather pattern for this portion of the country. It's not going to be that humid. It's going to be like being in Arizona in the desert heat with low humidity in Florida of all places, and that allows the temperature to get hotter. Watch Tallahassee on Thursday. The hottest temperature ever in Tallahassee was 105. Right now they're predicting 104 degrees. And by the way, we do have an outside chance of at least one or two locations challenging the all-time Florida high temperature record, which is 109 degrees in the Panhandle back in 1931, Tom. So it's been a long time since that record's been broken. We'll wait and see. Thursday could be a close call.
All right, I'm down here in Florida, so I'll let you know, Bill. I'll let you know how hot it is. All right, man, have a good one. We thank you for that. Still ahead tonight, the cab chaos. A New York City taxi plowing into pedestrians on a Manhattan sidewalk. How a group of people rush to save two women pinned by the vehicle. Plus, the tourists trapped in a cable car over the Himalayan mountains. The frightening moments they were forced to climb down a single rope. And the vote by swimming's international governing body that restricts transgender athletes from competing. A U.S. Olympian and gold medalist joins Top Story next. The reaction tonight from inside the swimming community. Stay with us.
At 73, Prince Charles is still waiting for the job that is his birthright.
Do we want Charles? Do we want a monarchy?
I'm Keir Simmons, and we'll take on these questions and more in our new podcast, Born to Rule. Listen now.
NBC News, streaming free now.
The day's biggest political stories with trusted insight now and expert analysis now. A daily look at the politics behind the headlines. Meet the Press Now, streaming weekdays at 4 p.m. on NBC News Now.
When was the last time you made space to listen to somebody?
What I learned from a very young age is radical love, radical forgiveness.
We are meeting people one after the next who have made profound changes.
It showed a lot of personal strength for me. Why am I trying to make other people happy over myself?
So many life lessons that are going on in these conversations. We're watching a transformation.
Join Hoda Kotb for her podcast, Making Space. Listen now.
News is happening now.
To look at what's making headlines around the world.
We're coming on the air with breaking news.
This is a significant moment.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
It's a can't-miss summer on Today.
They are walking strong, elegant, and pretty easy to prepare.
How to cut costs on your vacation? Vicky has the answers.
Every single thing you need for the best summer yet.
Only on Today.
Top Story with Tom Llamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now. Now Tonight with Joshua Johnson, streaming weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
All right, we are back now with a decision that's making waves in the world of sports and beyond. The swimming world's governing body, FINA, has decided it will restrict transgender athletes from competing in elite women's events, including Leah Thomas, the first openly transgender woman to win an NCAA Division I title. Aaron McLaughlin reports.
Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
Just 3 months after UPenn swimmer Leah Thomas became the first openly transgender athlete to win an NCAA Division I title, this morning, swimming's international governing body is imposing new restrictions for trans women. On Sunday, FINA, which partners with the International Olympic Committee, overwhelmingly voting in favor of new rules, effective today, saying trans swimmers must have completed their transition by age 12 to be eligible to participate in women's competitions. Athletes would also have to prove that they've continuously suppressed their testosterone levels since their transition.
It is a policy that we need to introduce in order to protect the competitive fairness of our event.
The new rules, which do not impact NCAA athletes, mean trans swimmers who transitioned after showing signs of puberty will no longer be able to compete at the Olympics or World Championships. At the FINA vote, some Olympic swimmers speaking out in support of the new rules.
That men and women are physiologically different cannot be disputed.
In March, Leah Thomas had completed 34 months of hormone replacement therapy, surpassing the NCAA's 12-month requirement to compete on the women's team. But her participation in the pool was met with controversy, with many arguing Thomas had an unfair physical advantage, an idea she refuted in an interview with ABC News.
Trans women are a very small minority of all athletes, and we haven't seen any massive wave of trans women dominating.
I am very devastated by this decision.
Skylar Baylor is a friend of Leah's and is the first trans athlete to compete for an NCAA Division I men's team.
What does this mean for Leah and her future?
Knowing her, imagine that she will fight as much as she can for her right to compete just like anybody else.
Leah Thomas has declined our request for comment. FINA also says they will work to establish an open category for trans athletes to be able to compete at an elite level. But that move is also receiving criticism, with some arguing a separate category for trans women will further exclude them from the sport. Back to you.
All right, we thank Aaron for that story. And joining us now for more on these restrictions is Nancy Hogshead Makar, a former American swimmer who represented the U.S. at the 1984 Summer Olympics, winning 3 gold medals and a vocal supporter of the FINA decision. Thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. I want to get right into this. So does the requirements signal, these new requirements, do they signal that swimming isn't welcoming, and inclusive at a time when so many leagues, especially in the U.S., are attempting to expand their diversity and inclusion efforts? Could this hurt the sport long term? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that by characterizing this as anti-trans, that it's somehow meant to harm trans people, that you're really alienating a lot of the swimming and a lot of the sport community, because what people can see when they saw Leah Thomas or Laurel Hubbard is what they can see with their own eyes is the difference between men and women's sports. And we know well that if we did not have a women's sports category, exactly what it would look like. It would look like the NBA, the NFL, National Hockey League, Major League Baseball. None of them prohibit women from participating, but in order to give women equal opportunities, they need their own team.
So, Nancy, I want to go back to the NCAA Women's Swimming Championship in March, okay? I'm sure you were watching. Leah Thomas, she won the 500-yard freestyle, but she also came in 5th and last in her 2 other races. So like most athletes, she's competing but not always winning. Clearly she can be beat. What does that tell you about the quote-unquote advantage argument for FINA's decision?
So even with the times that she swam, first of all, it's embarrassing that you would even call her getting last. She got 8th place out of 13,000 swimmers in the NCAA.
Yeah.
But 8th place out of 13,000 women swimmers is not a loss. That is something that somebody's going to put on their resume.
Nancy, that was not an attack on her, and you know it wasn't. Just if you could focus on the question, I would really appreciate it.
No. I'm saying that that's an attack on women's sports to
It's not. It's not an attack on women's sports. It was just where she placed. It was the wrong word. I would agree. It was the wrong word.
Okay.
That's not what I was asking. The point of the question was she had been beat. So let's focus on that, please.
Well, if a team gets 4th in the Final Four, you don't say that they lost, right? You don't say
Nancy, can you answer the question?
Okay.
You're going on a tangent, please. I can ask it again. You're going on a tangent.
Okay. So what we know is that what I was told, I was part of the decision-making process when the NCAA was coming up with its transgender rules that were going, and what I was told was that if somebody took a year of gender-affirming hormones, that they would move laterally. So if they were hypothetically 500th, this is the exact words I was told, that they would move to 500th in the women's category. And now we know that that's not true. So we have the best scientists in the world saying that you cannot balance inclusion with fairness. So you've got to pick one and then just be honest about what is your higher order priority. And given that the women's category is meant to serve half of the world's population so that we can have an opportunity to win and succeed, you know, I firmly support the boundaries around the girls and women's category. Before we get to that second question, which is, okay, well, how do we include? I mean, in this open category, how do we do it? And there are lots of answers to that. But first, we got to have that, the exactly what FINA did. We need to have that first nailed down.
I hear you. Leah Thomas today, she put out a new statement. I want to read it to our viewers. This is what she said about the ruling. She said, the new FINA release is deeply upsetting. It is discriminatory and will only serve to harm all women. If you could talk to Leah Thomas face to face, what would you tell her about why you think she shouldn't compete?
Well, first, I mean, I have a lot of empathy for Leah as a human being and for her transition in how she wants to be successful in the classroom and public accommodations and in family law, et cetera. But when it comes to women's sports, I hope that because she's an Ivy League student, that she can recognize how it's not fair. Her own times are almost, they mirror what science tells us. What science tells us is that the shorter the distance, the harder it is for somebody to roll back male puberty. So her time in the 100 and the 200 freestyle, very little rollback time at all. And none of her times rolled back to where she would have been if, sort of equivalent to what the gap is between men and women.
I want to read you just one more thing. It's from one of America's most influential athletes, Megan Rapinoe. This is what she had to say when asked about transgender inclusion in sports yesterday. She said, quote, "Show me the evidence that trans women are taking everyone's scholarships, are dominating in every sport, are winning every title. I'm sorry, it's just not happening." So we need to start from inclusion, period. Do these new restrictions promote discrimination against transgender athletes? So that's the question for you. Do you think they promote discrimination? And I understand this is not a simple complex, and it is very, very complex for both sides.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I heard the term trans women are women. And of course, I was like, yes, 100%. But then to recognize that, hold on, in a very few areas, there's a conflict of rights. Women's sports is one of them. I would say that having Leah be able to compete did the whole transgender movement no favors, because on my phone was the athletes, their families. These are very liberal people that have grown up in the sport of swimming, that swimming and track and field are uniquely co-ed. We see more so than just about any other sport sees, like soccer or softball or volleyball, exactly what the differences are between men and women. And everybody could see it. I can't imagine that going to NCAA's was a pleasant experience for Leah. And, asking people to ignore facts and science doesn't do the cause any favors.
Nancy Hogshead Makar, I'll give you the last word there. We thank you for coming on Top Story. Again, this is a very complex issue. We appreciate your time. When we come back, the kidnapping arrest, the 3 suspects accused of robbing and kidnapping a Florida dog breeder, how bad driving helped save the victim, and the yacht going up in flames while a family and their 2 dogs were on board. What happened next? Stay with us. To cover the news, you have to be in it.
This is how so many towns and cities are protecting themselves. They're pushing the gates open. Was there a school officer on campus? That's what we've been told.
No. Top Story with Tom Llamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
News is happening now.
Look at what's making headlines around the world.
Right now on Morning News Now.
We're coming on the air with breaking news.
And this is a significant moment.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
These days, it feels like the news never stops. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. It can be hard to keep up, so let's get started together.
Hallie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
We'll meet Ukrainians who are defending their country one block at a time. When you were still in Kiev, could you hear the bombing? My name is Lester. And who's this?
To cover the news, you have to be in it. This is how so many towns and cities are protecting themselves. They're pushing the gates open. Was there a school officer on campus? That's what we've been told.
No. Top Story with Tom Llamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Women's basketball has been systematically held back. Our players and coaches have been harmed. After 49 years of Title IX, we still have work to do.
In Their Court, a podcast from NBC News and NBC Sports that goes inside the issues of inequality in women's sports. Listen now.
NBC News, streaming free now.
All right, we're back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the kidnapping arrest in Florida. Police say the 3 suspects posed as interested dog buyers before robbing, assaulting, and kidnapping a Port St. Lucie dog breeder. Authorities say the victim was ordered to drive. When he began driving erratically to attract police, it worked, and officers also found guns, knives, and a large amount of cash in the car. The investigation tonight after a New York City taxi plowed through pedestrians. Police say the cab collided with the bicycle before jumping a curb near Manhattan's Madison Square Park. A group of 15 to 20 eyewitnesses reportedly lifting the taxi off two women who were pinned. At least 6 people were hurt, including 3 hospitalized with serious injuries. The driver stayed on the scene and so far has not been charged. All right, 3 people and 2 dogs are lucky to be alive after escaping from a burning yacht off the coast of New Hampshire. Take a look. Cell phone video shows the 70-foot vessel engulfed in flames near Newcastle. The 3 passengers and 2 dogs jumping into the water. Good Samaritans on another private boat pulling them to safety. No one was seriously injured. The boat eventually sank. No word yet on what caused that massive fire. All right, now to our country, observing Juneteenth. It's the day in 1865 when enslaved African Americans in Texas were proclaimed free, and what was once a small celebration in Galveston is now a national moment of reckoning. NBC correspondent Blaine Alexander takes us to